is dead, betrayed by his Nori bodyguard Ruck. His Imperial machine, which had managed to bring the New Republic to its knees, has been shattered at the Battle of Bilbringi. The remaining pieces of it, under the command of Captain Pelion, has fled toward the deep core. Jedi Isard, former leader of the Empire, has been killed, along with her clone. One of the larger remaining Imperial warlords, Prince Admiral Delic Krynel, has been killed, and his Seutric hegemony has been defeated. Riding high off of defeating Thrawn, Isard, and Krynel, and hoping to end the threat of the Empire once and for all, the New Republic seized upon the moment to blitz the remaining warlords. In their eagerness to end the war, the New Republic leaders failed to notice two things. First was the consolidation of personnel and war material in the deep core. Upon emerging from the unknown regions, Thrawn put out a call for all loyal Imperials to join him, which is how Pelion had entered his service. Most Imperials joined with him, but a sizable contingent of Imperial force had refused his call, choosing instead to remain in the deep core. The second was that the war with Thrawn had severely depleted the New Republic fleet. As the New Republic stretched into the Outer Rim to root out the remaining Imperials, it left the core relatively undefended. The surviving Imperial warlords, after seeing what Thrawn had accomplished, agreed to organize a new Imperial ruling council. United against a common foe, the new Empire launched an offensive against Coruscant and other important parts of the galaxy. Under such force and with so little resources available for defense, Coruscant fell to the Empire. The Imperial ruling council began setting out to reform a government, but the effort quickly fell to conflict over how power would be divided. The Imperial Army and Navy split from each other, with the latter insisting that it should choose a new Supreme Commander alone. Bureaucrats and members of Compnor attempted a coup against the Moffs and Grand Moffs, and the Imperial Security Bureau and Imperial Intelligence started assassination campaigns against each other. The Imperial Civil War had begun. The war started on Coruscant, with entire sector groups being wiped out and much of the planet being devastated by varying orbital bombardments. The war then spread across much of the galaxy the Empire had just recaptured, spurred on by the New Republic, now basically a renewed Rebel Alliance, running deception campaigns in conflict zones to manipulate different warlords into attacking each other. It is at this point that our story begins. Dark Empire was a massive comic event proposed by comic book writer Tom Veitch as a continuation of the Star Wars story beyond Return of the Jedi. He was given the go-ahead around the same time that Timothy Zahn was authorized to begin Heir to the Empire. The two projects went through production and finished at roughly the same time. Now, several rumors exist about how things were decided behind the scenes, and we'll probably never know what actually happened, but essentially Zahn's work was preferred by decision makers and was given priority. Veitch's work would still be published, but would have to be edited to align with the Thrawn trilogy, which led to animosity between the two writers. As you probably surmised, based upon the backstory I just went over, there are some discrepancies in the timeline between the Thrawn trilogy and Dark Empire. Thrawn is defeated in 9 ABY, or after the Battle of Yavin, and the Empire is shattered. The Battle of Coruscant takes place in 10 ABY, meaning the consolidation of the warlords and retaking of the majority of the galaxy and Coruscant all occurred in 1 year. This was most likely caused by the changes needed to align Dark Empire with the Thrawn trilogy. The Battle of Coruscant, featured in this story, was most likely intended to be the original taking of Coruscant by the Rebel Alliance, but Zahn depicted Coruscant as having been taken by the Alliance years prior, so a quick change was necessary. As with many of these older properties in the EU, there are some discrepancies that you just have to overlook. With that out of the way, let's dive in. The story opens above a war-ravaged Coruscant. The Liberator and Emancipator, two Star Destroyers captured at the Battle of Endor, jump into the system to broadcast falsified signals in order to provoke inter-imperial attacks. They are suddenly met by 3 Star Destroyers and are prompted to provide unusual clearance codes. The codes the rebels have are not sufficient, and the 3 Imperial Star Destroyers open fire. The Emancipator, under the command of General Wedge Antilles, breaks into evasive maneuvers, but the Liberator, commanded by General Lando Calrissian and attended by Luke Skywalker, receives the majority of the attack and crashes to the planet, only being saved from complete destruction by Luke's expert flying. They are stranded there for several days while word gets back to the rebellion. Han and Leia learn of the crash and rush to Coruscant to retrieve the crew of the Liberator. They arrive just in time and get the crew aboard. However, before Luke and R2-D2 are able to board, Luke is distracted by a great disturbance in the Force. Suddenly, a force storm erupts from a hyperspace wormhole and swallows Luke and R2. The Millennium Falcon leaves the planet. Back at Pinnacle Base, headquarters for the Alliance, the leaders are informed that the different Imperial factions have traveled into the deep core. In addition, new superweapons have been employed across the galaxy as part of Operation Shadow Hand. These superweapons, called World Devastators, are massive construction platforms that tear apart planets and reconstitute the raw materials into weapons, including new Devastators, that can then be deployed in the war effort. The first target of Operation Shadowhand is Mon Calamari, one of the earliest supporters of the Rebel Alliance. Lando is assigned to the Emancipator and is sent to Mon Calamari to hold the planet until the full fleet can be mobilized. In the deep core, Luke arrives at Biss, a planet imbued with the dark side of the Force. He is greeted by the Emperor Reborn, a clone of Emperor Palpatine with Palpatine's consciousness transferred into it. Palpatine explains that it was never his intention to pass on the Empire to a successor. He would rule it forever by transferring his spirit into new bodies when needed. Palpatine reveals a whole cache of clone bodies which he needs due to the ravaging effects the dark side has on the clones. Due to this, his body ages at an accelerated rate, forcing him to move to fresh bodies from time to time. Palpatine's spirit has been traversing the galaxy since his death at Endor, making its way to Biss. Now that he has claimed one of the clone bodies and mobilized his new empire, he is ready to retake the galaxy. He has brought Luke to Biss because he wants him to take Darth Vader's place by his side. Realizing how dire the galactic situation is with the reborn Emperor and figuring he can unseat Palpatine from within the Empire, Luke kneels before the Emperor and pledges his loyalty to him. One of his first acts is having the master signal for the World Devastators uploaded into R2. Back at Mon Calamari, the New Republic fleet smashes the blockade of Imperial ships designed to allow the Devastators uninterrupted movement on the planet. Wedge dispatches the task force's fighter squadrons to the surface to fight the TIE D automated starfighters being produced by the World Devastators. After the battle raged for some time, the lead Devastator, Silencer 7, left the planet's surface and targeted the Emancipator, ripping the Star Destroyer to shreds and forcing the crew to abandon ship. Meanwhile, Han and Leia have traveled to Nar Shaddaa to find a transport that will take them to the deep core. While there, Leia receives a message from Luke telling her not to follow him. While traversing the smuggler's moon, Leia is confronted by a woman named Vima Deboda, who gives her a lightsaber. Suddenly, they are ambushed by a group of bounty hunters led by Boba Fett and are pursued to the Starlight Intruder, a freighter that can take them and the Falcon to the deep core. Back on Mon Calamari, 3 World Devastators fall into the sea due to being shut down by Luke from Biss. After arriving on Biss, Leia pilots the Falcon to the Emperor's citadel. Han, Leia, Chewbacca, and C-3PO are brought before the Emperor and Luke. Leia is knocked out and taken to the Emperor's private chambers so that he can turn her to the dark side. By this point in Palpatine's cycle, his current clone body is already beginning to fade, so Leia feels safe to speak with him. While there, she notices he has a mysterious artifact called a Jedi Holocron, a compendium of knowledge usually created by a single Jedi. Palpatine explains what it is and how he took it from Jedi Master Ashka Boda. Furthermore, he explains that he intends to escape the need to cycle through clone bodies by overshadowing the growing child within Leia's womb and to take the baby's body for himself. In anger, she topples Palpatine's bed and makes off with the holocron. She rushes to Luke and tells him that the dark side has no hold on him. She convinces him to leave with her. Meanwhile, Han and Chewie are freed from their cell by Shug and Sala, some of Han's old contacts that accompanied them on the Starlight Intruder. They all meet at the Falcon and leave Biss. However, it is revealed to Leia that Luke has not actually come with her, but instead created an illusion of himself to trick her into leaving the planet. In reality, Luke is back in the Citadel and is preparing to confront Palpatine. Luke confronts the dying Palpatine's body and reveals his true intention, to end Palpatine once and for all. The Emperor allows his current body to die, hoping to reach a new one before Luke destroys all the bodies. Luke goes on a rampage through the lab, destroying all the clones he can. However, he misses one, and Palpatine is reborn again. The new, refreshed Emperor engages Luke and defeats him. In doing so, he completes Luke's fall to the dark side, reducing him to his pawn. Luke has taken Vader's place. Back on Mon Calamari, the Devastators have been wrecking the planet with impunity. Suddenly, R2 engages the sabotage codes Luke installed. The Devastators shut down and fall to the planet's surface. However, the crew manage to keep the weapons factories running while they try to reassert control, thereby keeping the rebel forces at bay. The crew reasserts control and continue on their devastation of Mon Calamari. However, R2 has another trick ready. He engages a new code that alters the Devastator's targeting distinctions. The massive superweapons begin recycling each other. With Luke finally fully under his control, Palpatine engages the next step of his plan, sending out his new fleet from the Galactic Core to begin conquering the galaxy. He and Luke board the new Eclipse, a massive star destroyer over 17 kilometers in length, and pursue Leia as Palpatine still needs her baby's body. While fleeing Biss, Leia investigates the holocron and somehow activates it, revealing the holocron gatekeeper, Bodo Bass. The holocron delivers a 1,000-year-old prophecy pertaining to their current situation. A brother and a sister facing a Jedi killer, the brother falling to the darkness and the sister needing to save him and withstand the Dark Dynasty. Any consideration of the prophecy is interrupted by the arrival of the Eclipse at Alliance command. Palpatine makes his demands. Leia is to bring the holocron and board the Eclipse alone. If she does so, he promises to discuss a truce with the Alliance. Leia boards a shuttle and travels to the Eclipse. After arriving, she is taking the stand before Palpatine and Luke. She makes a final plea to Luke and successfully brings him back to the light side. Angered at losing Luke again, Palpatine engages him in a lightsaber battle. Luke eventually defeats him. Enraged at his defeat, Palpatine unleashes a massive force storm to destroy the Alliance fleet. Luke and Leia join with each other and together turn the storm upon Palpatine. The force storm begins devouring the Eclipse. Luke and Leia rush to flee the ship as it is completely destroyed. Finally free from the influence of the dark side, Luke declares the Jedi Knights will rise again. This story is okay. It's very uneven and does not flow nearly as easily as its counterpart, Heir to the Empire. There are some interesting ideas within it, mainly the inclusion of a holocron with ancient Jedi teachings and the progression of Leia's Force abilities. But the story definitely has its share of criticism that often overshadows any of the praise the book receives. The biggest and most obvious criticism of Dark Empire is the return of Palpatine. Bringing back dead villains is a common trope for fiction franchises and is often viewed as lazy. Instead of doing the hard work of creating new, interesting characters, just bring back one that the fans already know about. It was the solution J.J. Abrams used in The Rise of Skywalker. Somehow, Palpatine returned. It received justified criticism at the time, and Dark Empire deserves some of that criticism as well. But not as much. In The Rise of Skywalker, we know the background of the sequel trilogy. Palpatine's return in the final installment was never meant to happen, and as such, there is nothing in the first two chapters to lead up to it. It was an 11th hour Hail Mary to provide a dangerous villain for the trilogy's conclusion, and then the pieces left over from the previous chapters were co-opted to provide ad hoc backstory. It was sloppy, thrown together, and incoherent. To its credit, Dark Empire was written with the Emperor's return in mind, so it is much more purposeful in its narrative building. It also provides a bit more narrative justification with its use of clones versus that of the sequel trilogy. In Dark Empire, we learn that Palpatine has returned in a number of clone bodies that degrade over time due to his use of the dark side. While the Emperor's return does diminish Vader's sacrifice in the EU chronology, he did kill the Emperor, and the villain in Dark Empire is a poor facsimile. In the sequel trilogy, we learn that the Emperor that Vader killed in Return of the Jedi was a clone, meant that his accomplishment was much less impactful. Vader didn't kill the Emperor, he merely killed a clone. I won't allow this to devolve into another rant about how horrible the sequel trilogy is, but I did want to address it briefly since it did use this plot point from Dark Empire. As to the decision to bring back Palpatine in this property, I believe the decision works narratively, but fails thematically. Narratively speaking, the Emperor seeking immortality makes perfect sense. He had no intention of leaving the Empire to a successor. He would rule the galaxy forever. This desire is further expanded upon in later EU works in the prequel era, and even George Lucas touched upon it with the tale of Darth Plagueis the Wise. It makes perfect sense for the Palpatine to use clone bodies to prolong his life until a more permanent solution could be employed. However, Star Wars is a story, not a historical piece, so we must weigh thematic issues as well. Thematically, Anakin Skywalker was the chosen one destined to bring balance to the Force by eliminating the Sith. At the end of Return of the Jedi, he sacrificed himself to kill the Emperor, thereby ending the Sith with his own death. That should be the end of that particular story. By resurrecting the Emperor, the writers betrayed the thematic structure of the original trilogy. I enjoy Dark Empire for the most part, but that is a major problem when taken in context of the overall Star Wars story. In a similar vein, people also thought it was a betrayal of Anakin Skywalker's sacrifice to have Luke fall to the dark side, particularly as easily as he does. Palpatine's entire goal in Return of the Jedi was for Luke to embrace the dark side and take Vader's place by his side. Luke successfully resisted this call in Return of the Jedi, fueled by his desire to see his father redeemed. But here, Luke pretty easily aligns himself with the Emperor. Sure, he tells himself that he's seeking to undo Palpatine from the inside, but you never get the sense that he believes what he's telling himself. It was a nice touch to have Leia be the one that pulls him back to the light, sort of mirroring his love for his father that kept him in the light in the Return of the Jedi. Another major issue with Dark Empire is in the timeline inconsistencies I mentioned at the beginning of the video. If you were to read Dark Empire on its own, particularly without reading the Thrawn trilogy first, it's pretty obvious that it was intended to depict the Rebel Alliance as much weaker than it is in the overall context of the surrounding stories. Just the fact that it's called the Rebel Alliance is justification for this thought. Apparently, the United Empire was so powerful that it undid 5 years of progress made by the New Republic and devastated it so much that it chose to reform itself as the Rebel Alliance. This is hard to believe, and it is much more conceivable that in Veitch's original vision there was no New Republic. Then, when Zahn was given priority, he was forced to alter things to better fit into that narrative. With all of those issues set aside, however, the story is good. With the clone emperor dead, the Rebel Alliance will seek to press its advantage against a faltering Dark Empire, while Luke looks to find some way to reestablish the Jedi with the guidance of the Holocron. However, the threat of the Emperor still weighs heavily across the galaxy. We will continue our story in Dark Empire 2. Have you read Dark Empire? What did you think about the return of the Emperor? What did you think about Luke falling to the dark side? Let me know down below. Thanks for watching.